Hello there, this is the Oceanwave made by XCMKB, the seller that I usually go to get my ergonomic keyboard stuff. So before I get into the Oceanwave, let me introduce you to the layouts that I have. The first is row staggered, which is the normal keyboard layout that everybody uses. The second is columnar staggered, which has columns offset between each other. It kind of helps to type comfortably, I guess. The third is the ortholinear layout, which has a basic square layout, looks nice and has a logical look to it. And now with the Oceanwave, I have a splayed layout keyboard, whereas your fingers lay flat and get stretched outwards. I've always been interested in this layout, so here it is. Nice disclaimer on the box. And this is the Oceanwave. The Oceanwave is an ergonomic 36-key splayed layout keyboard that comes with one rotary encoder, one flat wheel encoder, an OLED screen, haptic bzz, an extra switch slot for an artisan keycap, able to use either MX or low profile chalk hot swap sockets depending on which sockets you want to solder, and has underglow RGB. So yeah, there's a lot on a keyboard. For the Oceanwave, I paired it with lubed Duroc Shrimp silent tactile switches and the PBT custom cherry profile keycaps, which I regretted buying the other day. Interestingly, the cherry profile keycaps work fine with the keyboard because it feels like you need to have your fingers low since they're stretched out, making them flat. The key bob also has a slight incline by a few millimeters from the different size rubber feet underneath, so it brings the top row keys ever so slightly nearer to your fingers. My first impression on typing on the keyboard was like I really had to change my posture and had to figure out what was the optimal or proper angle my hands needed to be. So initially I had to sit straight and have my hands perpendicular to the desk. After a few days, I think I relaxed a bit from that posture. So it doesn't mean that you have to be sitting straight to use this keyboard. Then let's look at the finger placements. My fingers were less curled and felt flat on the keys as I needed to plant my fingers, especially the pinkies, onto the pinky home row keys. I felt like I had to constantly be conscious of where my fingers were on the home row keys because I would definitely be pressing on the wrong keys when they don't return back to the home row. This was always the case with pinky keys that I messed up many times between shift and menu or delete and apostrophe. And on top of this, the pinkies needed to stretch, or rather curl, more than usual when typing on the left or most right bottom rows. I think you can use your palm for this, but I haven't subscribed to that religion yet, so I'm stuck with curling pinkies now. For the top rows, the keys are slightly separated against each other, so I have to look at the keyboard when typing in numbers because I don't have muscle memory on where the numbers are. I also wasn't used at figuring out which finger to use to type the semicolon key. Like, do I use the pinky or do I use the ring finger? And lastly, for the thumb keys, I sometimes miss which key to press because all of them are 1U sized keys as compared to having a 1.25U wider key for space and backspace on my other keyboards. In total, it took about half a day to get used to this layout coming in from a 40% columnar staggered layout, but I still mess up on the pinkies and thumb keys ever so frequently. By the way, I settled with having a Char Siu Pao Halal Kot artisan keycap for my middle switch, and it looks cute enough. Don't have money for artisan keycaps. The switch plate is a clear polycarbonate sheet and is only held together by the switches. Usually I have spacers and screws between the switch plate and the PCB, so this was something new to me. Moving on, there are two rotary encoders on the keyboard, one on top that alt-tabs through apps, and one hidden wheel at the bottom for volume. Although I don't use these as much, I think the placement is genius on this keyboard. The Oceanwave also has an OLED screen in the middle to tell which layer you're on. I remember the seller mentioning the OLED screen couldn't be installed, but they managed to put it in anyway as the keyboard is using an RP2040 controller, which has more memory space versus the usual Pro microcontroller. One cool feature of the keyboard is the haptic bzzz that happens when I change layers. It feels nice, although it sometimes might affect the RGB on the keyboard due to vibrations. I think this is a cool feature of the keyboard but has no practical use, or I might have not found a practical way to use it. By the way, I also noticed there were hand-wired locations on the PCB for extra IOs, so all the OLED haptic buzz and the 2 encoders could be used, so it's impressive lah. On the software side, it's recommended to use Vile, and this was my first time using it. It looks nice and has more features than Via, although I don't know most of the features for now. By the way, if you've watched this video up till here, consider subscribing to this channel as I usually make videos of things that I like, which coincidentally is now my Ergo Colmac 40% keyboard journey. It helps a lot, thanks! Overall, I like the Oceanwave and the splayed layout. It's interesting and provides a fresh challenge on how to use Ergo keybobs. I do wonder how a custom splayed layout based on my hand would look like and feel like if I made one versus what the Oceanwave has. So in any case, I'm going to use this as my daily driver for the next few weeks. Thanks to XCMKB for this awesome keyboard. Alright, that's all. I really hope I like to use this keyboard. ご視聴ありがとうございました。